Right, again, breaking news. U.S. President Donald Trump, while addressing a press conference on a deal struck between U.S., Canada and Mexico, said that India wanted to start trade talks with the U.S. immediately. President Trump described India as a quote-unquote tariff king, while saying that India called up in pursuit of talks and wanted quote-unquote to keep the president happy. Saying that he spoke to Prime Minister Modi on tariffs on Harley-Davidson, Trump said that India promised to lower tariffs on Harley-Davidson.
Well, India charges us tremendous tariffs when we send Harley-Davidsons, motorcycles, other things to India. They charge very, very high tariffs. And I've spoken to Prime Minister Modi, and he's going to reduce them very substantially. Nobody ever spoke to these people. He said, nobody ever spoke to me. In other words, we've had leaders here. I'm not, trying to be overly dramatic. We've had presidents of the United States and trade representatives. They never spoke to India. Brazil's another one. That's a beauty. They charge us whatever they want. So if you ask some of the companies, they say Brazil is among the toughest in the world, maybe the toughest in the world. We don't call them and say, hey, you're treating our companies unfairly. You're treating our country unfairly. So India is a very, very high, they really charge tremendously high tariffs. On motorcycles, it was 100%. So you send a motorcycle into India, there's a 100% tariff. Now that's so high that it's like a barrier. In other words, who's going to buy it? Costs you so much. Now they've already reduced that substantially, but it's still too high. My relationship with India is great, with Prime Minister Modi is great, and they're going to start doing a lot. They've called us to make a deal. We didn't even call them. They called us to make a deal, which is like shocking to people. India, which is the tariff king, they called us and they say, we want to start negotiations immediately. When Bob Lighthizer said, what happened? He would never do this. They said, no, we want to keep your president happy. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? It's true. They have to keep us happy because they understand that we're wise to what's been happening. India charges tariffs of 100%. And then if we want to put a tariff of 25% on, people will call from Congress. But that's not free trade. And I'd look back to people and say, where do these people come from? Where do they come from? So because of the power of tariffs and the power that we have with tariffs, we, in many cases, won't even have to use them. That's how powerful they are.
All right, so interesting comments there. I'm joined by Siddhant Sibal, who's WION's principal diplomatic correspondent, who's joining us live from New York. Siddhant, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. You've been in New York for a week now. You've seen this language change from the day when Trump said that India is a great friend. He praised India in the UN General Assembly. Then he asked Sushma Swaraj to pass his regards to his good friend Modi. And today he's calling India tariff king. Can you please, for the benefit of our viewers, give us the context of this and what exactly was that conversation that transpired between the officials of the two countries?
Well, yes, it's like give some, lose some types of scenario here within the bilateral relationship between India and the US. And the American president today is sounding very critical. And his second comment in just a matter of 2 days, very critical about India, saying that he's using tariff as he's basically using tariff as a weapon for a trade deal. And he said that India is a tariff king, and he said that he had a talk with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in which the conversation was basically on tariff, but the entire outline is basically your tariff versus my tariff, and he is dealing with every country in a similar manner, whether it's China, European Union. And he said this from White House, where he had a deal with the Canadians and Mexico. So these three countries coming with the deal, where he mentioned India, saying that Indians want a trade deal with the Americans. I've been speaking to Indian officials in New Delhi also, who have neither confirmed it, neither denied this thing happening. But of course, there's a sense of urgency he is trying to portray with India, that if India doesn't chalks out a trade deal with America, he will impose tariff. We know what has happened with the Harley-Davidson case, in which the company India was imposing a lot of tariffs on the company And later on, under American pressure, India had reduced the tariff. But of course, Indian officials mum on the entire comments being made by the US President here in White House.
Right, Siddhant, India's Finance Minister Arun Jaitley said a few days ago that the trade war between US and China is going to benefit India. And here we heard Trump say that it's not being reciprocated by India. So he was saying that when the trade happens between the two countries, India charges 60% or 100% tariff on something, but America doesn't do the same. So what are your sources telling you as far as India's position on the so-called imbalance of trade as Trump has always accused India of conducting?
Well, India will be diplomatically making sure that there is not a major fallout. But if we compare what Trump has done with the Chinese, with India, he's just spoken and he still considers India as his close ally, and he has been speaking from the United Nations General Assembly, as you just mentioned, lauding India from the United Nations General Assembly. With the Chinese, the relationship is in a terrible state of affairs. We have seen how it's a full-blown tariff war, and India has been, of course, hoping that it gets benefit with the entire trade war between Beijing and America, and of course Washington and Beijing. But in a war, nobody is a winner, and the world is going to lose, because it's basically protectionism at its highest. And every leader who spoke from the United Nations General Assembly had warned the danger of protectionism, except the US President Donald Trump. For him, it's America first, a patriot, and he also has to speak for the domestic audience, because America goes to midterm polls in November. I have been speaking to now a lot of Indo-Americans here who have been saying that they will vote for Democrats because of their policies, their liberal policies, and they of course benefit them, because immigration has come under pressure from India. So clearly it's anti-Trump sentiment.
Right.
The global trade development we are seeing, but when it comes to New Delhi and Washington, relationship is overall good, except on, of course, tariff and trade wars.
మీకు ఈ వీడియో నచ్చితే ఒక లైక్ కొట్టండి, లేకపోతే కామెంట్ చేయండి, బట్ సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేయడం మర్చిపోకండి.